This is Surfing Through Cinema. I'm your host, Hawaii Harry. Today I will be discussing the next film for Disney Week. This movie is a quasi-sequel to the last Disney movie we discussed, Saludos Amigos. This film also talks about Latin culture, and this film in particular also has some really interesting and really cool technical achievements. I'm of course talking about this week's film, The Three Caballeros. Okay, so some technical details about The Three Caballeros. It was released December 21st, 1944 in Mexico City. And this is one of the few Disney movies that didn't have a world premiere in Los Angeles. Well, this is kind of a huge deal. This is one of the few premieres that wasn't in the United States. So that's quite an achievement that Disney made. And like I stated earlier, this is the first animated film to also have live actors in it. And the actors, they interact with the cartoon characters, and it's really seamless, and they really spend a lot of time and effort to make it look realistic. So that's a huge technical achievement that they made with this movie. So another technical detail about The Three Caballeros, this is another goodwill message film that Franklin Roosevelt had released during World War II as part of his foreign policy. And so you could definitely tell that just like Saludos Amigos, this one was really rushed and kind of felt like it had a deadline to achieve, some basic animation. So now we'll get into the plot, if you could call it that, for The Three Caballeros. So, the film is divided up into various segments that are kind of interwoven together through a cohesive plot line. And the plot line is Donald Duck has received a bunch of presents from his cousin, and so he's been opening each present up, and it starts a different segment in a different cartoon. And so that's basically the entirety of the plot. So now I'll discuss each of these segments separately since they're kind of unique and different from each other. So the first part's called the Coldblooded Penguin. And a penguin named Pablo, he's kind of sick of tired of living in really frozen cold Antarctica. So after various attempts of trying to leave Antarctica, he eventually makes it to the Galapagos Islands, where he starts living in very hot and very humid weather, which he eventually learns to enjoy. And along the way, he tours parts of Colombia and Argentina, and then he stops in Galapagos Islands. And this segment is narrated by Sterling Holloway, who's a famous Disney voice actor who voiced Winnie the Pooh and Kaa from The Jungle Book, as well as the stork in Dumbo. So it's kind of got an interesting feel to it. It kind of feels comedic. It's definitely really funny, the penguins interacting with each other. It's a humorous segment. And the way Donald watches this is his first gift is a projector. So Donald puts in a film reel, and this is the show that he sees. It's Pablo the Penguin. So then the next part is called the Flying Gauchito. A young gauchito, he catches and trains a flying burro and teaches him how to run in a horse race. And people kind of make fun of him because it's a little horse, or a little donkey I should say, and the gauchito can't be taken seriously because he's just a little kid. And so as the race is going and going, they start flying around, and they end up winning the race because they put in a lot more effort into it. And so it's a kind of a cute storyline too. Not as humorous, but more of a cute storyline. And then the next segment is called Bahia, which is a city-state within, which is one of the federal states within Brazil. And Donald opens up this book about Brazil, and his friend Jose Carioca, who we first met in Saludos Amigos, he comes out, and first he sings a song about Bahia, and then he invites Donald to go with him, and they ride through, it's like a fold-up storybook, and they eventually do find the city with one of the cities within Bahia, and they come across some singers and dancers. And they encounter one of the more popular singers back then. Her name is Aurora Miranda, who's the sister of Carmen Miranda. Both are famous Brazilian dancers and singers, and Donald's really infatuated with her. And this is one of the first segments where we see humans interacting with animated cartoons. And they did a really good job, It's really seamless. You can really feel that the actors are dancing and looking and talking with the animated characters. And so I'm curious how they really did that. If they had like a doll or a person walking around, I don't know, but they did a really good job of making it believable that they were interacting with each other. And so they exit the book, both Jose and Donald, and the next segment is called Los Posados. And a group of Mexican children are retelling the nativity story, and it's kind of a really cute, really respectable moment. And then it ends with Donald starting his own party, and he finds a giant piñata, and he breaks it open, and we meet Panchito Pistoles, who's the red bird on the cover of the movie, and he's super crazy and shooting off his guns, really fun and exuberant. And then he invites both Donald and Jose to go with him down to Mexico, and that leads into the next part. And he takes them down to see various places within Mexico. The highlights are Veracruz and Acapulco. And while they're down there, they're at the beach, and Donald tries to swoon a bunch of girls over, and he starts chasing a bunch of them around. And this is also kind of a humorous segment. And just like with the Bahia part, this also is with live actors. And again, they did a really good job of making it seem like Donald really was chasing a bunch of people around. So this is another aspect of the movie where you see that really cool technical achievement. So they take Donald away, and he starts drinking a lot of alcohol and becomes really drunk. And then he starts hallucinating, and he starts seeing like flowers moving around and cactus. And he falls in love with famous singer Dora Luz, also from the 1940s. And in a series of hypnotic and strange things go on, makes it a little really surreal and different. The way I think of it, I kind of compare it to the Stargate sequence within 2001: A Space Odyssey. Kind of like that, just like surreal colors and imagery and really random all over the place. This brings us to the grand finale with Jose Carioca and Panchito Pistoles, and they bring in a bunch of fireworks, and Donald starts chasing one around because it's a bull. He had been chasing bulls earlier in the movie, and it explodes into a huge array of fireworks, and then it ends with saying the end in various languages. It says it first in Spanish, and then Portuguese, and eventually English, and kind of signing off and saying, the U.S. and Latin America, we're friends. That's kind of the feeling you get with that ending. And yeah, that's basically the plot. I mean, kind of like the other package movies, it's just a collection of cartoons that they sewn together with a pretty basic storyline. And this one is my personal favorite of all of them, all the package films that they did, because it still coincides, like all the cartoons still basically coincide with each other, like they kind of make sense with the plot. Because further down the road, as I discuss about more of them, they don't really mix well together. So I think this is the best one that they did during this time. And yeah, that's the plot for Three Caballeros. I'm going to go on a break real quick, but first, here's a message from our sponsor. This podcast is brought to you by Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Here's how. It's totally free. There are tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast from your computer and even your cell phone. But that's not all. Anchor distributes your podcast for you
so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many, many more. You could even make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Anchor is everything you need to make a complete podcast all in one small place. So go on and download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today.
Okay, so we're back from our break. So now I'm going to get into some critical reviews and my personal views about the Three Caballeros. So, at the time of its release, many felt the film lacked good artistry and that it relied too heavily on the technical achievement. So, many said that the artists felt like the artists weren't really putting enough effort into the actual animation part, and that the focus was too heavily on the actors. But despite that, it has an 88% on Rotten Tomatoes. And the critical consensus there is that it's a pretty abstract film, but it's still a pretty enjoyable film. It's not the craziest thing Disney's ever done. Both critics from when the movie came out and modern critics feel it's a little strange that Donald Duck is chasing around women. He's a bird, he's a duck. Like, why is he chasing after human girls? It's a little strange, but nevertheless, it's a movie, cartoon, I don't know. You kind of see that in Looney Tunes, so I guess it's not that different. I don't know. But yeah, that's the critical reviews of it. So now I'll get into my personal views of Three Caballeros. Like I said earlier, of the package films Disney made, this is my favorite one. I especially love the dynamic between Donald and Jose Carioca and Panchito Pistoles. I really like all three of them. I think they have really good chemistry, and it really shows, or it really makes sense that they would make a show about them called Legend of the Three Caballeros. I personally haven't seen it, but from the look of it, it looks pretty good. And they've even showed up in the new DuckTales. They're a great dynamic. I think they're the best part of the movie. And I gotta say, I think the live action intermingling with the animation is still phenomenal. It's so believable. It's really believable. I'm really glad that, even now it's still pretty good. There's a few instances where Donald's coloring is a little off, especially when they're down in Mexico. It doesn't really match well. But most of the time, it's phenomenal. The crazy flower sequence they got, kind of like the Stargate sequence from 2001. Even that, it was pretty impressive. They were able to have Dora Luz. She was a flower. I mean, a little strange, but nevertheless pretty cool how they were able to do that. Now, my biggest beef with it, the ending felt kind of rushed. I think they had to make a deadline or something, because it felt like they didn't know what to do with the movie after they left Mexico. They kind of just threw in a bunch of random stuff. So maybe that was the tight budget constraints. Maybe it was because the U.S. Department wanted it out sooner. I don't really know. All I know is that it feels really rushed, and I definitely think they could have done more with it. And but yeah, those are pretty much my thoughts and feelings about the Three Caballeros. So next time I'll be discussing the next film for streaming through Cinema Week. This is a film that was released by the legendary director and former actor Clint Eastwood. And this film stars both him and Hilary Swank. And I'm of course talking about the 2004 sports drama and winner of Best Picture, $1 Million Baby. Well, until next time, this has been Surfing Through Cinema with Hawaii Harry. Take care.
Thank you for listening to Surfing Through Cinema. Make sure to check us out on Facebook at Surfing Through Cinema with Hawaii Harry and on Instagram with Surfing Through Cinema. We also have a website, www.anchor.fm/Surfing Through Cinema, where you can learn more details on upcoming episodes and on past episodes.